So, hello everybody. My name is Mark Sage, and I'm the Executive Director of the AREA. It stands for Enterprise Augmented Reality Alliance. We're the only global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance dedicated to helping accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And I'm super excited to be here again, EWTS. And hey, have I got a show for you today? I have four of the world leading experts in XR. And we're going to be having a huge talk around kind of enterprise XR, wearables, hardware, software considerations. I'm kind of going to basically pose these guys three questions. One, tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you've done in terms of delivering immersive technology. Two, talk to us about the benefits that you've gained. And three, and kind of more, I think is really important, about some of the challenges that you've overcome. So it's a real opportunity to learn from these experts, to find out about the different things they've been doing. So I hope you enjoy it. There's an opportunity to ask some questions at the end, but without further ado, I'm going to start to introduce the team. So first, I'd like to ask Scott to introduce himself, talk about some of the problems that you've solved using immersive technology.
Hey, I'm Scott Burkey from WestRock. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are a global manufacturing company. We manufacture paper products, packaging, machinery, and retail displays. And so we have about 300 facilities globally. And so with that comes a lot of distance-based opportunities, we'll call them, right? Problems or issues. And so certainly over the last year and continuing on now, we have used XR to allow people to be somewhere else through remote expert capabilities, and to really bridge that gap during travel bans and difficult travel seasons. So that's been a big thing that we've done, and it's worked out quite well for us.
Fantastic, Scott. And I'm sure we'll talk more about how you've done that a little bit later. Thomas, let me hand over to your good self.
Sure. Hi. So my name is Thomas Weinlandt. I work for ASML, a Dutch company that produces most of the machines that print computer chips. So very, very large, very complex machines that cost incredible amounts of money. And we had a similar problem to Scott, where we did most of our maintenance and support by flying people around the world between Europe, the United States, and Asia. And that worked great up until about March of 2020. So starting then, we deployed hundreds and hundreds of augmented reality headsets to all of our major sites around the world to help with support. We're also pursuing other, let's say, use cases such as augmented reality work instructions, but the biggest one by far for now is support.
Fantastic, Thomas. And we'll probe into that a little bit more detail when we talk about some of the benefits and some of the challenges. So thank you for that. Said, can I ask you to say hello and introduce yourself and some of the work that you've been doing in this space?
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me here, and excited to be with such amazing panelists. My name is Saeed Bakadir. I lead the XR business and platforms at Qualcomm. I have been involved, I guess, in immersive technologies for more than 10 years now. Some of you guys still remember maybe before you way back as part of Qualcomm. Just quickly about Qualcomm, we've spent the last 30 plus years really inventing technologies that really transform how the world connects, computes, communicates as it looks today. We've played a significant role in making mobile the largest technology platform in human history. In fact, I think you guys might know this already. There is a forecast that there should have been just between 2018, 2022, there will be about 8 billion phones. It's really a massive scale. We're now taking really all of that innovation to virtually every other industry, from automotive to industrial, IoT, and of course, into XR. We have been proudly playing, again, a leading role, bringing mobility to XR devices, getting it ready for scale. We have launched over 45 different devices so far, just based on Snapdragon processor. We have created integrated solutions for our partners with both hardware and software, of course, to meet the needs of growing ecosystem across OEMs, ODMs, operators, component vendors, and of course, solution providers that are out there trying to build complex solutions to solve complex problems in the market. We're constantly learning and happy to get feedback on how we can continue driving this objective. And that is why I'm super excited and looking forward to the discussion today.
Thanks, Saeed. That's a great introduction. And Vincent, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mark, for allowing us to participate. My name is Vincent Hernandez. I work at American Bureau of Shipping. I work as a technology coordinator. We have one of the great opportunities as a working as technology coordinator is actually being able to help our clients. We not only do have offices here domestic, but also international. And some of the challenges that COVID brought around is like we still need to help these clients with their assets, whether it be on a rig, whether it be on a vessel. We're going to different types of ports, and our surveyors need to make sure that the vessel's up and running. And technology as this has helped us understand how we can adopt some new and modern technology to solve a solution that sometimes we can't get a personnel on time over there onto the other side of the world. This technology can alleviate that downtime that you have to quarantine and the clients or the vessels still need to produce. So that's some of the challenges that we face, that COVID has actually helped adopt some of this technology and find better use practices, safe practices, and how we can alleviate some of the problems that have come across that weren't expected before. And this quarantine situation has helped us adopt this technology.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Vince. That's great. So that's a kind of a quick introduction from everybody and what they're into. Let's dive into some detail. And this is often my favorite part, which I call show me the money. Okay, as we know, business leaders only invest in technology when there is some sort of return on investment, some sort of benefit. Now, many of you have been in this situation, probably had to convince your business leaders to invest in this technology. So I'd like, and perhaps we'll start with Thomas, your kind of journey and the kind of benefits that you've realized, the work that you've done to really kind of bring this technology into your company.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with the work that we did to bring this technology into the company. Going back about 3 or 4 years within ASML, we had a group of people working on what we projected to be our roadmap for augmented reality. Basically, what we thought it could, how we thought it could impact the company going forward, years and years into the future. And so back in 2019, we projected that we would first be using augmented reality at our customer sites somewhere in around 2025 or 2028, because of how long it would take to get approval from our customers to allow us to use these devices. Of course, COVID changed a lot of the math behind that. So we had to quickly in March of 2020 revisit that and compress those 4 or 5 months of effort into maybe a few weeks to roll out these headsets and get them deployed worldwide, which was great. But it was, I think, in the end, worth it. When we're trying to quantify the benefit of augmented reality for us internally, the main thing we're looking for is providing value to our customers. So with one of these lithography machines, because it's one piece of a very large and complicated machine, or producing computer chips, every day that these machines are down costs our customers millions and millions of dollars or millions of euros. So if you just consider the fact that we no longer need to get a plane ticket and fly from, say, Europe to Taiwan, you're already looking at least a day's worth of time every time you use these headsets. But even beyond that, there are some use cases that have kind of come up because of COVID, where there's one person who needs to fly somewhere and then go to another location, but because of mandated quarantines or the difficulty in getting a visa, it could have been months. So one customer, a case that would have otherwise taken months to fix, we were able to have them use a HoloLens headset, and they fixed it in a few hours over the weekend instead. So enormous benefits, both for ASML and for the semiconductor industry at large.
Perfect. A couple of quick questions follow up on that, Thomas. You talked about your plans for 2025 and 2028. Do you think you would have been able to get there earlier? Or has COVID really been the kind of main driver and the only reason why you're kind of successfully deploying technologies now?
Sure. So the reason, let's say, for that very specific timing of 2025 or 2028 is we thought that we would have to include, let's say, the negotiations for using these headsets into the release of our new product. So the semiconductor industry is very, very, very secretive. Our customers don't like to share IP at all under any circumstances whatsoever. Many times, if you're found even with a USB stick, you can be kicked out of the company and permanently banned. So our assumption was that maybe in a few limited customers would be open to using this technology. COVID completely changed that. I think that without the impact of a global pandemic, I really would be surprised if we're able to roll out this technology by 2025, if I'm being perfectly honest. There's a huge, huge opportunity that I think ASML was well suited to leverage. And yeah, it's been an interesting year.
Yeah, no, and I can imagine, and congratulations on being able to do something which was planned for a long time. I know that the world has changed completely. So, and I just want to ask one other question before I move on to somebody else about kind of the business case part. Was it a case of having to do a kind of financial justification, or was it so obvious that we just, the leadership team said, just get on with it, we really need to do this? How did that kind of dynamic work?
Yeah, so for the initial rollout, it was, let's say, a bit of a panic since I think it was March 13th, 2020. I'll always remember is when all travel was suspended with no foreseeable end between Europe and the United States. So again, our way of working came to a screeching halt, and we needed something very, very quickly. So for the first few headsets, I think the business case was pretty obvious, but as we were expanding and rolling out, we needed to really justify, let's say, the continued use and the continued expansion of it. That said, again, what we found is that there, for us at least, were always one or two cases where the value was so high that it basically justified the rest of the program. I think we were expecting more of a slow, constant trickle of cases where they were all about similar value, where we're saving, 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 weeks here. But we found is that although those certainly were the more common ones, we would sometimes have a use case where it would save, a month or two of downtime, and that would really justify all the other efforts.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you, Thomas. That's great. Let me jump over to Vince, because I know you talked about some of the similar use cases, but it'd be great to get your view on some of the benefits, the ROI, and any kind of potentially intangible kind of benefits. I'm going to ask everybody, I've used the word intangible, but the kind of things you didn't really plan for or realize. So any insights you can give us, Vince, would be great.
Sure. It was fortunate that ABS was actually exploring and adopting some of the wearable technologies prior to COVID. So whenever the COVID came around, a demand came about that we needed more things from our perspective to accomplish more challenges out in the world. So that it kind of helped us out. Prior to starting from the ground up during COVID, we were adopting some things. So that kind of helped out. Some of the challenges that were like, look, we had an old true try type of method that everything was working for us. It was okay. The logistics was working. It was polishing itself up. Then COVID came around, and those timing and schedules, the budgets started coming up. Like, look, we need to go ahead and still do this work, but now we have all these things because we're adding quarantine time, such as other members on here. Different processes need to be involved. We need to do maybe a day's worth of work, yet you need 4 or 5 days of prior logistics planning. And then once you transfer up to a different location to do another day's worth of work, you still need to add all those different things. And it was adding to be too much. So, well, how can we adopt what we're currently doing, add a little bit more things, accomplish more things? What technology is out there that we can accomplish the same amount of things or more things in the same amount of time without incurring too much of the cost? So at one time, we were just focus in smaller areas, COVID gave us a boost. Clients who were adopting some of the wearable technologies and we were using it. That's like, look, wow, if you can give us another tool that we can do this and do a little bit more, we're all in it. And then we had the newer clients that say like, look, we don't have anything yet, but we heard that A, B, and C was working with you guys and they found something that was working for them. And how about you come to us, show us what you were doing with them, and then we can jump on board and jump on the train. So that's kind of the things that if you have a nice set of clients, they'll be your spokesperson. If you work with them, hear them out, see what is it they need, and really solve some of their solutions, because this technology is not a one case solves all. It's just the technology is not there yet. Will it come in the future? Potentially. We see it there. I think all of us have a passion for this technology. But if you can at least give them something that they can say, like, look, yes, you're helping us out here. We're being more efficient. We're getting what we need done. And they're more welcoming for different challenges along with you versus trying to force everything just at one shot. It's a little bit of a long shot. I know there's tons of beautiful advertising out there that it can paint a beautiful picture, but really listen to your clients, really listen to what their challenges are. If you can do that, you have a partner, a spokesperson, someone that advocate for the technology, for your actual application. And it really comes a long way whenever you have more advocates that you've worked along with.
That's perfect. And you mentioned a little bit in your talk about kind of working with smaller groups. Is that how your deployment kind of method went? Let's work with a few, get some feedback, start to roll out. Is that, or can you perhaps just elaborate a little bit more on that process?
Sure. So one of the challenges is like this technology has a tendency to catch a lot of people's attention, but we can't go out and try to solve the world for everyone. But we can find the best use cases, the one that we can say like, look, we have an idea, we have this technology, let's focus on this small group. And we focus on them, we can try to see how we can polish this technology, how we can get the processes, and also, not only the processes, but do it safely. That was one of the biggest things. How can we use this and still keep the same standards of safety that we implement at ABS, for both for ourselves and for our clients? So once you do that, you get some good feedback. Okay, good. This worked. This did not work. Connectivity issues is one of our biggest challenges, to where it looks great on an office environment, but yet we go to a client and they're restricted in whether it be security access, connectivity challenges. So that helped us understand, instead of trying to reach everybody, trying to give feedback, then you get too much noise. If you really want to go with everybody, then somebody's got one thing that they want and somebody else something different. And you're trying to figure out, well, how can I mitigate both? And when you're trying to solve that issue, you're forgetting the big picture of what you're actually trying to do. So it really helped us focus on a small group, get that working, get that, okay, we're satisfied that this is good. How can we make it grow a little bit better to reach out this other group and then bring them in on board? That's how we found a little bit more success, focusing on a smaller group rather than the bigger picture.
Yeah, thank you. That's really insightful. Thank you. Okay, let's go over to Scott. And again, Scott, focusing on the benefit side now, any kind of ROI measurements and things like that. I know you've done a tremendous amount of work at WestRock. Perhaps talk a little bit of the kind of insights that you've gained from an ROI and benefit perspective.
Sure. So when COVID started, of course, it's kind of bad to say, right? But I mean, the elephant in the room is COVID was good for XR in a lot of ways, and thank goodness that XR was around. And like my colleagues, I had already started to put remote expert capabilities on tablets in factories. So we had that groundwork. So when that dreaded March 13th hit, I think Thomas said last year, it was, okay, well, we've already got a way to where we don't have to travel and we can still get some business done. So initially our ROI thoughts or kind of cost savings were around, we don't have to travel. So using remote expert just saved us $1,500 for a trip, with plane fare, car, hotel, food, that sort of thing. So we started off very simple with how we realized that value and how we kind of recorded the savings. And typical kind of things as well started to emerge. Training time reduced. That's a quantifiable metric. Are we collaborating with customers through virtual reality, and are we starting to win some deals? Are we able to kind of keep our sales efforts going? Again, some kind of somewhat quantifiable, results. Machine uptime is huge for us as well, right? So mean time to repair, mean time between failure, very quantifiable metrics. And if the technology, if XR keeps those makes those numbers better, right? Well, then that's certainly quantifiable. But we did have a couple of things, I think to your point, Mark, that we had a couple of things that have happened that we're happy about, but we didn't really see coming. And I'll call out two in particular. Tough to quantify, but good nonetheless. We're glad they're here. One is that we start to be identified somewhat. We're in some of the markets where we have factories or mills. It's very competitive for a workforce, right? So in like a Chicago or Southern California or Dallas, where we have a lot of facilities, there are a lot of places you can work. And so we noticed that because we train and support our workers in those markets with XR, we start to differentiate ourselves as a little bit of a more kind of desirable employer, right? You can go work in this factory, you can come work in our factory, and we're training using the HoloLens, or we're using the Quest, or we're doing things with RealWear. And so we started to stand out a little bit at career fairs, job fairs, and our recruiting, that sort of thing. And so that was a nice benefit. Tough to quantify that again, but we'll take it. The other thing that's happened as well is this kind of customer collaboration that I talked about, right? If we make a retail display, we can build a prototype, put it on a truck, ship it to our customer's headquarters, and they can see it, and then they can send it back, call us with some issues or modifications, and we do that back and forth. Now we're able to put our retail displays to go on big box retailers for our brands that are our customers. We're able to put that in virtual reality and say, hey, you can pull this up on your tablet. We can ship you a VR headset, and you can go in and look, walk around it, give us your feedback. It's a lot quicker and cheaper to do virtual design iterations with the customer than it is to do physical prototype iterations. So we kind of get to stand out perhaps a little bit as a packaging or display manufacturer that will work with you as a customer through emerging technologies. So again, tough to quantify that value, but we'll take it. It's coming through with some of our customers and their positive comments.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Now, I've been executive director for the area for 5.5 years now. But if I had $1 for every time in the COVID times people said, I wish we were further forward with our XR strategy, I'd be a rich man. I'd be sipping pina coladas on the beach. But so it's great. And, companies being able to take that. What I'd really like to see next, and again, Scott, you may be able to comment on it, but certainly when we come to Saeed next. So what happens next? We've had this opportunity with COVID. Now we need to kind of almost drive additional use cases, and additional benefits and stuff like that. And if maybe you can make a quick comment on that, and then I can ask Saeed to comment on that, the next kind of steps.
I think you're right. Everyone's in a different place as we sit here in September of 2021. Some folks are kind of where I was at 6 months ago. Some folks certainly are where I hope to be next year. But I think really a big shift that we've made, and I would encourage anyone kind of in our place at where we're at in maturity to make, is to move from perhaps some of the putting technology in place because it's cool or it's expected that it's going to be the right solution, to move away from reacting to more of the conversations I have now are around, I've got all kinds of cool devices, but let's talk about your problem first, right? Let's talk about the environment. Let's talk about your workers. What are they trying to do? What's your bandwidth connectivity? What are the age of your workers? I really try and shift into talking about the problem we're trying to solve before I even drag a headset out and say, well, take a look at this. So I think really digging deep, like some of us have said, and focusing on the problem before we start throwing headsets at it, I think is a good kind of shift for us where we're at. I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of where I'm focusing now.
Fantastic. That's great. On that, let's bring Said back in again. And Said, I'm not deliberately leaving you to the end, but you have this kind of opportunity to look across the whole ecosystem, kind of providers and enterprises and things like that. So, the guys have talked quite a bit about the ROI part. What do you see, some of the benefits, but also the future, and how is kind of Qualcomm going to enable some of that future work?
Well, Mark, I think for us, it's very simple. If Vince, Thomas, and Scott have an ROI, we have one. It's very simple. I said this earlier. It's like for us, it's all about the ecosystem. For us, XR is the next big thing that will happen after mobile. I mentioned to you guys where Qualcomm is coming and our role in the mobile industry. And to be honest, when we see use cases, and I completely agree with all of you guys identifying the problem, or what we call, for us, the problem is going to be translated to a use case, and the use case is going to be translated to a requirement, and that requirement is going to be translated to a chipset, a software, a deliverable that we're going to provide to our customers to build a real wear device or a HoloLens or whatever device you guys will use. If we fail to build the right hardware, the right software, you guys are not going to meet eventually your use case, and eventually there is no market, there is no industry that's going to be built up. So this is really for us important. All what you guys mentioned about the importance of understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. If I just say, I just get a device and try to fit it in, how it's going to work in a use case is definitely what we believe is the right approach from our side. So I think for us, really, the ROI, again, is very easy to measure. Our aim is not few units out there. It's XR becoming the next big platform. So we're talking millions, if not billions over time. But we know it's going to take time. But XR is here today, and it's solving problems. And to get to the millions and the billions, we need what you guys are doing. We need exactly all of these use cases and building every bit slowly and in the right way, right? So I think for us, we are super excited and see the potential of what this technology will be fixing. And that's why bringing the mobility to it, bringing the processing power, bringing all the learning that we've had so far and taking it to the next level is our main focus right now from Qualcomm perspective.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Said. It's very well said. And then, again, I've mentioned it before, but I'm a great believer we have a really good grounding now. We have companies, people using this technology. So what else can we enable them to do? We've spent a lot of time in the area working with the members to define, I think it's something like, there's about 12 different use cases. So whilst we've emphasized quite a bit about remote assistance as one of the particular use cases, but we can build on top of that, the step-by-step guides, the compliance kind of sign-off, the design reviews and things like that. And that also brings down the cost of ownership of the devices. If you can use them for multiple things, then that's great. So perfect, guys. I think we've done a good job looking at some of the benefits, but we all know with any new technology, there are some challenges, and what I'd like to do, and again, we have kind of about 15 minutes left, is to talk a little bit about the challenges and what you've done to overcome them. And, with any new technology, we know it's not perfect. Otherwise, every technology would be successful. So maybe I think if it's okay, I'm going to start with, let's start with Vince this time. Vince, you want to talk about some of the challenges and you've talked a little bit about connectivity, but perhaps you can elaborate a bit more on that and talk about the other things that you've overcome.
Sure, Mark. One of the biggest things is connectivity. That's absolutely correct. Whether we're working in an office environment or working off-site, things may be great in the development and design and concept that we've come up to. Okay, we think we have a solution. Great. But one of the challenges we should never forget, it's where it's going to be deployed. Is it going to be deployed in an office environment? Okay, it'd be great for testing. Are we going to be in a warehouse with a lot of machinery going around that maybe the signals will not be as strong? especially if you're going to have all the additional features you want to do. If you want to connect to the cloud, you want to bring down information, things that are not going to be stored on the wearables itself, or if we're going to be sending it out to an offshore site. Do we have enough bandwidth that actually we can do the process and the features that we thought were great in the office environment? We found the solution, but yet the bandwidth restricts all that. So whenever we are trying to plan in the brainstorming stages, is okay, let's figure out where we're going to be at. What's the client going to be in the location? Do they have a hardwired Wi-Fi connection, or are we going to be using satellite communication? Are we using 4G signals, 5G signals? All that really plays into perspective on what are you able to do, because some of this technology has tons of features, great things that can really help solve a use case, a solution, an idea, concept, or problem. But when you come into those bottleneck situations, because the connectivity will restrict you to what you can do and what you cannot do. Being able to download a simple PDF document when you don't have an internet signal is useless. You need that document. So those are some of the challenges that we have noticed whenever we're kind of thinking of what we're trying to solve. Based on that, then we come back to back into our whiteboard, our brainstorming type of sessions. Okay, we can't have 5G signal. We have only offline capabilities. How can we do it to where we can plan, maybe resolve more of the issues using offline capabilities, whether it be the devices are storing information, whether they're using the calculation, the processing on the actual devices themselves. So that's how we kind of having to kind of take a step back. So we're taking a step forward, thinking of what we're going to resolve. Once we're there, we're on the client side, imagining what's going on, talking to technicians or the people who are actually going to be using the device, talking to the actual facility managers to figure out what they have capabilities of. And then we got to take another step back and then look at our original concept, our original ideas. Like, well, we thought this was great. We went out, got some information prior to deploying devices. We need to kind of tailor our ideas, our solutions a little bit more to make sure that we fall within that tight crevice of communication bandwidth problems. That's some of the things that we've kind of just adopted, like, what great, how can we just polish a little bit more, and what connectivity bottlenecks that we need to plan for that we're going to be coming in the future once we deploy.
Perfect. Thank you, Vince. And I can see Thomas and Scott nodding away as I am, and I'm sure Saeed as well. And we know connectivity is one of the big issues. I don't know, Scott or Thomas, maybe we'll start with Thomas real quick. If you've got any comments particularly about connectivity before I ask you about some of the challenges, other challenges?
No, I mean, it's something that we run into as well. And you would think that we'd be in a much better situation, since we mostly work in clean room fabs where you're already supporting a lot of internet connected equipment, but definitely a major problem.
And Scott, I'm sure you agree as well.
Absolutely. In the basement of a paper mill in the middle of Oklahoma, guess what kind of connectivity you've got there? You know, so we've got to be resourceful, like Vince said, and we're working through it. You know, but it's the bane of our existence. Is you got to have the internet to do a lot of this stuff, but not everything. So we get resourceful, right?
And I think that's the message, isn't it, Vince? Is going back to the kind of planning part and what you can do to, you know, do stuff offline and things like that. So okay, so we've identified connectivity be one of the challenges. Maybe Thomas, I'll come back to you again. Do you want to talk about some of the other challenges that you've come across and perhaps a few insights about how you've overcome them?
Sure. I think the biggest challenge we face, a lot of, let's say, our work is at the customer site with customers who are very, very, very sensitive to intellectual property. And the ways that they're sensitive about that intellectual property and their ways of working around it are all, let's say, unique in different ways. So while we have one way of working internally for augmented reality and for the way we provide the devices and support them, we have to adjust our way of working or when we're at the customer, depending on what their expectations about augmented reality are, their level of perceived risk in different areas, and so on and so forth. So the way to get permission to use augmented reality at, let's say, one fab versus another can vary pretty dramatically from sure, go ahead. As long as you leave this area, to escalate it up the chain of command and make sure that there's a security guard watching you the entire time. Similarly, there's a wide variation in the level of, let's say, ergonomic and safety risk associated with AR headsets that changes from customer to customer. So while some customers may be pushing for us to use an augmented reality headset in a given situation, other ones might say, like, absolutely not, under no circumstances are you to do it. So I think for us, the biggest thing we're struggling with is the lack of standardization, both within our industry and around augmented reality in general. Not having a single clear set of guidelines on what's safe to use, or what situations it's safe to use augmented reality in or not. How do you handle, let's say, protecting intellectual property in a safe and effective manner, and just knowing what the best practices are and having them spread around the community is quite difficult.
Yeah, no, I can only echo, within the area, we have a number of committees, which are kind of the members come together, and we have one on security, we have one on safety, we have one on human factors, so your challenges are not unique, but it's something I think as an ecosystem we need to work together, and it's not a competitive thing. I think if we come and develop some best practices and some standards, we're again doing lots of work with standards organizations. So it was great to hear about some of your challenges there. Maybe I'd just jump over to Scott a second and have a little chat about his challenges and how he's overcome them.
My stuff tends to be out of the gate. It's a lot of the same things, right? Connectivity, loud work environments. A lot of our factories or mills are, 90 plus decibels, and, a standard HoloLens 2, you can't hear and they can't hear you. And, so working through some of that stuff, I think, and I certainly deal with like Thomas was saying, we deal with some of those issues as well around intellectual property. I do a lot of post-production work to blur out faces, blur out customer products, make sure that we're not making anyone uncomfortable. From a compliance standpoint. But I'll tell you, it's funny that what keeps coming to mind, Mark, one of the biggest things I deal with, and it seems odd to me, but probably the biggest thing I deal with are unrealistic expectations of what this technology is going to do, right? I'm a big Marvel fan, but I wish that, leadership never watched Tony Stark talking to Jarvis, because they think that that's what I'm going to go put in place in our factories. And they think that it's going to work as well in that mill in Oklahoma as it does in a Marvel movie. And so I deal with a little bit of the kind of, oh, that's all you can do? Yeah, that's kind of all I can do. I'm sorry, it's not what Marvel did, but there's some of that. And I joke about this, but it's everything. One of my colleagues already said this. Everything works great in a marketing video on YouTube or in a customer experience lab that our vendors, have us out there to their labs. Of course, it all works great in those environments. Great Wi-Fi, great lighting. Everything is already pre-programmed and ready for the demo. But where the rubber meets the road, out in the mills and the factories, out in our customer facilities, that's where it really happens. And it's not always the easiest, most sexy solution, but if it gets the job done, if it keeps machines running, it keeps people safe, then you can't argue with that. And so I deal with a little bit of that. I would say is not so much as WestRock leadership has been very supportive and pretty realistic and kind of pragmatic, but I've had my moments where I'm like, yeah, that's all it is. It's not super fancy like maybe you saw in a movie, but it gets the job done. And so some of that is, I have a lot of conversations around that.
That's really interesting. We're going back to that ROI piece, and it's important to be able to clearly state that. We talk a lot, we've done work in the area about AR is actually a change management activity. It's not a technology, not swapping out a bunch of PCs and putting in new ones or phones or whatever it is. You're talking about the kind of hearts and minds. And I always think there's a two-way, you're kind of convincing the stakeholders to invest. And I know you guys have all done a good job because you're here talking to us about it and being able to show that. But against that's a constant battle. But maybe, Scott, I don't know, the other way is the actual workers. Quite often the workers think, oh, this technology is coming in, I'm going to lose my job, or, I don't want to use it and stuff like that. Can you talk about some of the kind of tactics or thoughts you've had about managing that conversation and that piece of work?
I really thought, Mark, that was going to be a big deal. My experience is that has not been a big issue. The guy who's been in a factory for 30 plus years, and I'm trying to capture that knowledge so that we can use that to train newer workers. He knows he's close to retirement. He wants our company to be successful. He wants those young guys and gals to benefit from his knowledge even after he retires. And we've had a very good reception with that. Haven't had a lot of hesitancy with regards to, oh, that's going to replace my job. What I do see, and I'll be brief with this, is I do see when I talk to people in the factories and I find out what bothers them, what keeps them up at night, kind of what they're concerned about in their roles. They're concerned about not being able to do their job effectively and efficiently and safely. And they've all got families at home, just like we do, right? They don't want to lose their job and they want to do a good job like we all do. And so when I have some technology that I can bring to the table that helps them perform better, make less mistakes, not get in trouble, as it were, on their job, they love it because it helps them and it lets them do their job better and stay safe. And I've had a very good reception from bringing the technology into factories. When I approach it the right way, in a very human way, it's been received quite well. I'm happy to say, knock on wood, but my experience thus far has been positive.
If I can briefly add to that point, I think at least my experience has been that the people in the factory and the people in the field are actually some of the biggest advocates for not just AR, but XR technology overall. It tends to shrink the gap in communication between, let's call it the front office and the back office, where people who have been working on the floor for 20 or 30 years feel like they actually have, especially in design reviews, control and input to the design that's taken seriously and actually impacts the final product. I can't tell you the number of times a technician has gone into VR, seen like a tooling setup and said, oh yeah, well, we have to, clean this part over here. So if you can put like a little, bottle holder over here, it'll make my life much easier. Or, if you can raise this up another 2 inches or lower it 2 inches, then there's this other huge problem that we'll avoid. It's been huge. So I think kind of almost the opposite of people in the field or the factory pushing back against it. They've been, at least in ASML, some of the biggest advocates pushing for this.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. That's great. Syed, I want to bring you in because, we've mentioned before, Qualcomm's got a huge role to play. We've talked about some of the potential challenges, but, things like battery life and field of view and weight, when it comes to the very physical things about the hardware, you guys are at the leading edge. So what are your thoughts on, and perhaps, we can summarize this all together now, your thoughts on where Qualcomm see the future and what they're going to do to help overcome some of these challenges.
Well, Mark, look, by the way, I feel so bad. We're a wireless company first. When I hear connectivity issues that all of you guys brought up, I was like, yeah, I want to address that right now. But yeah, I think definitely something to follow up on. But look, I think, Scott, you talked about expectations from customers. I think there is a lot of education that needs to be done. XR is in a long, long journey. We have achieved a lot in the last few years, but we know there's a long way still to go. Technologies are not necessarily there. When you look even to mobile, how long it took to get to the smartphone as it is today, this is a more complicated product. This is a product you're gonna put in your head, right? And near your eyes. And as you move, it moves with you, so it impacts entirely your body. And it's just the requirements for it and the challenges that it comes with are so diverse that people need to compromise. In the meantime, that we're waiting for the holy grail device that everybody's going to be happy with, we need to compromise. Depending on the use case that you have, depending on what problems you're trying to solve, likely a device that will work for Vince might not work for Scott, or if it works for Scott, it might not work for Thomas. It's just, you have to expect that. Expecting that one device, I take a HoloLens and it's going to work for me across the board, it's not going to happen, right? So this is number one item really that is, I think, very important to understand. I would like to address quickly connectivity because it was one major one that was mentioned here. And when we look at connectivity, we look at it from three aspects. Why do we need connectivity, right? One is I want to access my data, like a PDF file or a video, whatever you need. Number two is basically I would like communication. I would like to talk to somebody else. That's the holy grail of what connectivity started mainly for WAN side, like 4G, 5G, and all of that. And the third one, it's about split processing because everybody wants it to be small. And this is more towards the future. How can I split that processing between what I'm doing locally versus something that's going to live in the cloud or live somewhere else in another device that is in there? And all of those, they have challenges with, you guys all mentioned bandwidth. And maybe the one that was not technically mentioned is the latency. Because if I want to get my PDF, I want it right now. If I'm watching live, someone giving me instructions, I don't want them to be in one position and I see completely like, I don't know, 1 or 2 seconds later on, I just get on my side. So two big challenges that are in there. I think my advice in general in those, because situations are different. If you're offshore versus you are in a noisy factory area, like where if you're trying to use Wi-Fi in a factory area, your design is already wrong from the beginning. If you're using a 5 gigahertz band versus a 2.4 gigahertz, or a 6 gigahertz, or a 60 gigahertz, or even using maybe 5G, all of those need to be studied depending on that environment. I think this is really what is important to, I would say, to distinguish between all of those use cases and also how to solve it. There are ways. I can tell you guys, I can guarantee to you for all of those, there are ways on how to solve it. 5G is a promise that it's going to address a lot of things, but I agree with you guys. What if I'm in the middle of the sea? I don't have that. Maybe I have satellite. Maybe I'm in a remote area. And there are ways like having a private network where you have a server where things are being stored and you have access to your devices. So we can talk a lot on this, but I think just for the interest of time, there are many other areas that Qualcomm is looking at. And particularly when we're talking about the device, and they heard as well challenges with the security, challenges with safety and the standardization. So we are working across all of those issues with our partners as well, because take example of security. You cannot imagine how much security knobs we have put in our platform, that pretty much you can put a vault into your device that nobody else can access, or you can have a very secured kind of pipeline to send that data somewhere else, or even to your display. We have those. I think what we need to do is, as we're getting these requirements, I'm hearing your feedback, guys, we need to work with our partners to make that available to you. So all of those knobs are there. And by the way, I just want to mention this between bracket quickly. We created multiple programs just to educate a lot about these capabilities. One of them is XR Enterprise Program. I'm sure, Mark, you're very well aware of it. And the aim of this program is exactly to bridge that gap of understanding between the solution providers like yourself and what we have in the platform, and also bringing eventually different OEMs and partners that can work with you on different use cases. So just closing my parentheses here and going back to what we're doing from processes, one of the areas that we hear a lot is the size, is the basically processing power that we have there. So you will be so proud to hear that. I think really that Qualcomm is working very, very hard to solve a lot of those, and you will see progress year over year in terms of power, performance, We're working with partners on display technologies, camera technologies, because while we want to do things just as specific, people want more interactions. They want like hand tracking. They want a voice in a noisy area. All of those means more processing. All of this means more power and performance to deal with. And that's what we are focused a lot on Qualcomm's side to advance the platforms.
Perfect. Saeed, that's fantastic. I'm super excited, and Qualcomm will be able to help us drive this forward. Guys, I think we've run over time a little bit, but it's been a fantastic time to spend with you. So Scott, Thomas, Vince and Saeed, thank you very much for your insights, and look forward to meeting you in person one day soon. And thank you for EWTS for bringing this panel together. Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.